Two men walk into a car dealership 10 minutes apart. Same age, same build, similar clothes. The first one browses for 4 minutes before a salesperson approaches. The second one is greeted at the door.
Welcome to the dealership.
They don't know each other. The only difference is that one of them arrived in a 2019 Corolla and parked in the lot. The other used the valet. Same dealership, same afternoon, different human being in front of you. This is not about what money buys. Cars, square footage, vacations, that conversation has been had 1,000 times. This is about something subtler.
If you step this way, we have
the way other people's behavior reorganizes itself around you as money changes. Not your behavior, theirs. The waitstaff, the bank branch manager, the attending physician who decides how long to spend with you. The police officer who reads you in the first 3 seconds. The hiring manager who clocks your address before reading a line of what you've done. The family member who never asked your opinion and now defers to you in rooms full of people. Money is often described as a tool. That framing is partly right and mostly incomplete. Money is also a signal, read constantly by systems, by institutions, by people who have no conscious awareness they're reading it at all. What changes at each level of wealth is not just the thickness of your wallet. It is the behavioral environment other people create around you, and that environment shapes you back in ways that take years to understand. Danielle is 26. She earns $28,000 a year, takes home about $1,900 a month, and on a Wednesday afternoon she goes to the ER with chest pain that has been bothering her for 2 days. She sits in the waiting area for 3 hours and 40 minutes. The triage nurse was not unkind.
I understand.
But when Danielle said she couldn't locate her insurance card, she has coverage, she just couldn't find it, the interaction shifted. More questions. A request to go back to the desk and sort it out. A form she needed to complete again. A second staff member who repeated questions the first had already asked. None of this was malicious. It was a set of friction-generating interactions that accumulated into a specific message. Your presence and your account of your own situation are provisional until verified. You have not yet established that you are the kind of person whose word we accept. Danielle is not unusual. Roughly a third of full-time American workers earn below $30,000. At that level, what she is experiencing is not an edge case, it is the baseline behavioral environment. Banks require more documentation for the same account types. Landlords impose larger deposits or deny on thinner pretexts. Customer service interactions resolve more slowly, with more holds, more transfers. The benefit of the doubt, that quiet default assumption that what you say is probably accurate, is withheld, consistently, across every domain, all at once. The psychological effect accumulates in ways distinct from simple frustration. Researchers describe it as a narrowing. The mind's attention compresses toward threat management, toward the vigilance required to function inside systems that treat you as suspect. Danielle doesn't consciously think she's being read as low income. She experiences it as exhaustion, as a wariness she carries into every institutional interaction. Her cognitive bandwidth, the processing available for longer-term thinking, for anything not related to the current transaction, is partially consumed by managing other people's suspicion. She didn't choose that tax. It is a feature of the environment she operates in. The people who greet the man who used the valet are not bad people. The nurse who asked for the form a second time is not a bad person. This is the first thing to understand, and also the most uncomfortable. The behavioral difference is not being produced by individual character. It is being produced by something faster and more automatic than character. Status signals are processed by the brain in under 200 milliseconds. Before a conscious thought has formed, you have already been assigned to a category. What signals are being read? The car you arrived in, your zip code on the form, the area code on your phone, your name, which research has consistently shown triggers different callback rates, different default assumptions about reliability. Your clothing, not whether it's expensive, but whether it reads as belonging. The neighborhood your ID places you in. None of these signals are the person. They are contextual data the operating system processes in real time, independently of what the person is actually saying or doing. Understanding the mechanism doesn't excuse the outcome, but it explains why the behavioral environment changes in ways that appear systematic, even when no individual actor is choosing to discriminate. The algorithm is distributed across 1 million small interactions, running in every institution simultaneously. Marcus is 31. He earns $65,000 a year in logistics coordination. He has an interview for a senior role at a competing firm. He prepared carefully, and the preparation shows. He gets a call back. Not from everywhere he's applied, but from this one. Some signals are now reading correctly. His income, visible through the address on his resume, places him in the category of person who gets the follow-up. The hiring manager doesn't consciously process this. The application reads as plausible. The default assumption tilts toward competence rather than its absence. But the line Marcus is standing on is unstable. He knows this without having put language to it. When he mentioned in the interview that he was renting, the question came up naturally. Talking about relocation, he felt the room shift. Nothing dramatic, but he'd felt it before. At the doctor's office when he gave his insurance provider. At the bank when he asked about refinancing, and the officer's explanation dropped into a more basic register than felt necessary. This is what performing adequacy looks like from the inside. It's not pretense. Marcus is exactly who he says he is. But he is constantly monitoring which signals might trigger the wrong read, which clothes to wear, which car to park where, which parts of his context to leave out of frame. The effort is invisible to everyone except him, and it is effort that the man who used the valet does not spend. One side says this gap is about individual choices. The other says the system is reading signals before you've said a word. Write your answer. The unstable part. One wrong cue and the old pattern reasserts. A different address, a different neighborhood mentioned to a different person, and a different room forms around him. Same Marcus, different room. He has learned to manage this semi-consciously, not as strategy but as accumulated knowledge about how the environment works. That knowledge is useful. It is also cognitive overhead that more advantaged people in equivalent roles do not carry. Rachel is 37. Her household income is $130,000. She goes to a bank to discuss a construction loan. The loan officer answers her first question completely, without redirecting her to a brochure. When she asks a follow-up that reveals she doesn't fully understand a term, he explains it without adjusting his register, without the slight deceleration that signals the speaker has just downgraded their assessment of the person across the table. This is what assumed competence feels like when you're on the receiving end. Rachel wouldn't describe the interaction as remarkable, which is precisely the point. It's unremarkable because it's what she's come to expect. What she does notice, and has been noticing more in the past 2 years, is the room. Not her room, the room as a whole. She was in a coffee shop last week and watched the person ahead of her have an interaction with the barista that lasted a beat too long, required a card swiped twice, ended with the barista's expression resetting in a way Rachel recognized but couldn't name until she drove home. She's seen it at the bank, at restaurants, in the parking lot of her old apartment building before she bought the house. She knows the interaction because she used to be on the other side of it. The shift for Rachel is not triumphant. The social world has reorganized itself around her income without her asking, and the reorganization makes visible the exact shape of what was there before. She is now treated with default assumptions about her reliability and competence that she didn't have at $55,000. The relief is real. The discomfort that arrived alongside it is also real. She cannot unknow the gap. Research on what happens inside these interactions has been consistent for decades. A 2003 audit study found that resumes with names more commonly associated with white applicants received 50% more callbacks than identical resumes with black associated names. Traffic stop analyses show higher search rates for black drivers even after controlling for stop type and stated reason. Studies on medical diagnosis find that physician visit length and treatment intensity vary by patient income in ways that don't track with clinical presentation. A patient's zip code predicts how aggressively their symptoms are pursued. These are not random errors. They are aggregate output of the operating system processing the same signals at scale. The halo effect runs in reverse just as reliably. The person carrying low-status signals is assumed less competent, less reliable, less worth the extra minute, the extended explanation, the benefit of the doubt on an ambiguous situation. Not from any individual choosing to discriminate, from the distributed algorithm running across every institution simultaneously. James is 44. His household income is around $400,000. He is introduced at a dinner party to someone he's never met, and the person making the introduction says, before James has spoken, the name of the company he runs. The person being introduced immediately recalibrates posture, eye contact, the length of the next sentence. The room has reorganized itself, as it tends to do now at these gatherings. What's happened to James's behavioral environment is a structural inversion. He is no longer being processed by institutions. He is being courted by them. His private banking relationship arrives with a named advisor who calls him. When he had a dispute with a contractor last year, it resolved in a single phone call, not because James is intimidating, but because the contractor ran a search and made a calculation about the value of the relationship. His family has shifted in ways he finds both gratifying and slightly disorienting. Relatives who never asked his opinion on financial decisions now bring him questions at holidays. An uncle who barely spoke to him 15 years ago finds him in rooms with a warmth James doesn't recognize from their previous relationship. His brother mentions his title in introductions that don't require it. When James made a decision last year that was probably wrong, he expanded into a market that didn't perform. The people around him didn't say it was wrong. They called it bold. They said he'd seen something they hadn't. They waited to see whether it worked out before revising their assessment, which meant the feedback loop that might have corrected him was delayed by 8 months. He noticed this. He has started noticing it routinely. Some people say the shift in how others treat you at higher incomes is just respect you earned. Others say it's a performance the system runs on your behalf, whether you asked for it or not. Write which one you think it is. The question James lives with, the one he doesn't say out loud, is whether the attention is about him. Not the title. Him. When the person at the dinner party leaned in, when the contractor called back the same afternoon, when his uncle began finding him in rooms, is that a response to something real? Or is it a performance the environment is staging around the number? He suspects the two have become genuinely difficult to separate, which is itself a feature of what this income level does to your social world. You stop being able to trust the signal. That is a different problem than not getting the signal. Sophia's net worth is somewhere between $2 and $5 million, built across a software exit and 15 years of disciplined investment. She is 41. Last year, she switched to a concierge medicine practice, a physician who sees a limited panel, charges an annual retainer, and is reachable by text. The difference from her previous primary care is not primarily the quality of the physician. It is the friction, or rather, the absence of it. There is no waiting room in the functional sense. Appointments start when scheduled. When a symptom concerned her 6 months ago, she texted her physician, who called within the hour. A specialist referral was arranged in 2 days. The specialist's office called her. She did not call them. Every system that previously required her to push has restructured itself to pull her instead. She also called the planning and zoning office about a variance for a renovation. The first person she spoke with described a process typically taking 4 to 6 months. Her attorney made 3 calls. The timeline, the attorney reported back, was different than initially described. No laws were bent. It is the ordinary operation of a system where the same rules have different practical applications depending on who is applying them. The psychological effect is something she didn't anticipate. Friction was doing something beyond annoying her. It was providing information. When she had to push to get a response, she knew the response required pushing. She had built calibrations based on how systems behaved when she engaged them. Those calibrations are no longer accurate. The systems now respond as though she is always the priority. She cannot tell whether the accommodating response means things are genuinely fine or means the system has learned to accommodate her specifically. The disappearance of friction is itself disorienting, something between relief and the removal of navigational equipment. At the bottom, a person is hyper-visible to enforcement systems and invisible to opportunity systems simultaneously. The debt collector calls. The housing inspector visits. The police stop is more probable. The bank flags the account. The system that looks for problems is paying close attention, and at the same time, the bank that might extend a business loan is not calling. The network through which referrals flow is not including that person. The information carrying opportunity is flowing elsewhere. At the top, this inverts. The enforcement apparatus steps back, not completely, but as a structural tendency. The deal not publicly offered arrives through a phone call. The introduction happens in a room you were invited into because of who else was already in it. Same person, different zip code. Every institution they touch generates a different behavior in response. The asymmetry isn't a flaw in the operating system. It is the operating system, running as designed. Michael's net worth is north of $20 million. Built across 3 decades, a company he started at 32 and eventually sold, several real estate positions, a portfolio with enough time and size to compound into a number he no longer checks with urgency. He is 58. He took a meeting last week with a city official about a development project. The meeting started on time. The official had prepared. When Michael raised a concern about one of the conditions, the official said he would look into it. The follow-up came the next morning, with a proposed revision that addressed what Michael had raised. His phone calls are answered on the first ring by people who matter. People find his ideas interesting before he's finished explaining them. The accommodation is so consistent that it has created a specific and serious problem. The feedback loops that kept him calibrated to reality at lower income levels are substantially degraded. When he was running his company with a small team and no safety net, a wrong decision had fast and concrete consequences. A misjudged product direction cost money he could measure, customers he could count. The feedback was immediate, and the learning was painful. Also the most useful information he had about how things actually worked. Now the feedback is delayed, filtered, and often reversed before it reaches him. People who work with him want the relationship to continue. They are not the right people to tell him he's wrong. People who want his capital want the opportunity to stay open. They are not neutral assessors of what he's proposing. The people around him are, by the nature of their position, incentivized to find merit in what he says. They do. Consistently. The machine is running, but the gauges are broken. Michael knows this. He has cultivated a small number of relationships with people independent enough financially that they have no structural reason to agree with him. He asks for the honest response, and means it. But even those relationships exist within a social context shaped by who he is and what he has. You cannot fully remove the distortion. You can only try to account for it. What he has lost, and he says this plainly when the conversation goes to the right place, is the experience of being told he's wrong before the consequences arrive. What changed at each level in this story was not the person. Danielle, Marcus, Rachel, James, Sophia, Michael. None of them underwent some fundamental transformation of character between one income bracket and the next. What changed was the behavioral environment other people assembled around them. The default assumptions in play when they walked into a room, whether systems generated friction or removed it, whether the benefit of the doubt was extended automatically or withheld, whether mistakes were treated as evidence of incompetence or evidence of boldness. The invisible constraint at the bottom is not simply money. It is the accumulated cognitive load of operating inside a behavioral environment that consistently questions your reliability across every institutional domain at once. That load is real and measurable. It shapes outcomes in ways that have nothing to do with the character or intelligence of the person carrying it. Danielle in the ER is not less capable than Rachel. She is making decisions under conditions that would degrade anyone's decision quality. And the cognitive bandwidth freed at higher income levels is not simply relief from bill anxiety. It is the cessation of a specific, exhausting labor, managing other people's suspicion. The mental energy Marcus directs toward performing adequacy, monitoring which signals are being read, which parts of his context to keep out of frame, is energy not available for other things. When that labor ends, somewhere in Rachel's range, the release of attention is substantial. People at that level often describe being able to think differently, not just more comfortably. That description is accurate. Most people think the biggest shift in how the world treats you happens when you cross a specific income threshold. Write the number you think it is. The car in the lot is a signal. The valet ticket is a signal. The address on the form, the area code, the name on the resume, all processed in under 200 milliseconds, all generating a different room for the person who carries them. The mechanics of that system are consistent across every domain, from the ER waiting room to the private meeting to the zoning committee that found a different timeline than the one it published. The question underneath all of this, the one that doesn't resolve, is what exactly you're experiencing when the room reorganizes itself around you. Whether it's recognition or projection, whether the attention is about you or about what you represent. James lives with that question. So does Michael. Having the room look at you is not the same as being seen. The next video looks at a related problem. The people who cross these thresholds and find that the upgraded room feels like a lonelier one. What the research says about the social displacement that happens when income moves faster than the relationships built before it did. That breakdown is next. Обсяг – 20 603 символи. Запит – 20 000, відхилення – плюс 3,0%.